You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Trying to get by as best you can.
I know, that's it,
It's
innit?
weird, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
weird.
definitely, mate. Aye. Yeah, so I'll just go through a quick intro, then we'll get started, mate. If that's okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so today I am joined by former striker and midfielder, most notably for Crewe, Middlesbrough, Blackburn, and Barnsley, and a host of other clubs along the way. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Craig Hignett on this podcast today. How are you, Craig?
Yeah, okay. Trying to do me a little bit. Been out for a walk today with the dog, but yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult, isn't it? I mean, I've got kids myself and all that, and it's just hard to keep them occupied. They're just currently doing the homework there, what the teachers just brought around. So
Yeah, that's a nightmare. And becoming a teacher again, it's not for me.
I know I've left the wife do it because I can't do it. It's too much for me.
Yeah, it's not for me either.
Yeah, so looking back,
you might see this.
Oh yeah, there's you. Come
Sit down. Go on.
Yeah, so looking back on your career, then, what was your earliest footballing memory that you can think of?
I think from the very start, all it was football. All the my mates played football from when I was playing football from 6 in an under-8 league. As a tiny kid, not really getting a kick, but just running around and enjoying it. And I think that's probably my earliest memory. From whenever I can remember, I've always had a ball and I've always played football. My dad was a footballer before, and he was very, very supportive in everything I did. And even when I was bored and I had no mates to play with, he'd take me to fields sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. So that's probably my earliest memory of it.
Yeah, like back in the day, jumpers for goalposts and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky because we had a field about 150 yards away from the house, so it had them metal goalposts up.
Yeah.
And my dad was great because my dad would bring goal nets and he'd put goal nets up and he'd make it as proper as he could. But we always used to get the lads. If there was lads walking on the field, they'd get involved, and before you knew it, there was a 10-a-side game more than not going on. After it just being me and my dad.
Yeah, good stuff. So when you were growing up, then who was your favourite player?
No, it was Kenny Dalglish, without a shadow of a doubt. I liked Sammy Lee, and people used to call me Sammy because I was freckly and I was little, like Sammy Lee was. But Kenny Dalglish for me, when I first started watching Liverpool and football, Kenny was the man, and what a great player. And I was privileged enough growing up as an apprentice at 16 to clean his boots as well. So that was a big thrill for me, as he was manager of Liverpool and I was an apprentice there, and I used to look after him and got to know him quite a bit, which was a massive thrill.
Yeah, he's been in the news a bit of late, hasn't he? It's good to see that he's doing well.
Yeah, he has, and thankfully he was only in a couple of days, and everything seems to be fine now.
Yeah. Yeah, so you started your youth career at Liverpool, so obviously you were a big Liverpool fan then, growing up.
I was, and my dad was an Evertonian, so my dad being an Everton fan, and he used to be a season ticket holder as well, he used to take me to Goodison, sort of early 70s when I was 5 and 6, and I used to watch Everton with the Bob Latchford and people like that playing. And then when I was a little bit older, and I mean a little bit older, about 8, I used to go to the Liverpool games with my mates on my own. So Everton always seemed to be a bit cold to me, and the blue and the way the stadium was. And when I went to Liverpool with the red and the atmosphere, and it always seemed a little bit warmer and a little bit of a better place. So I ended up going to watch Liverpool, and that's how I become a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, red's definitely the best colour.
Yeah, even though I've got blue on today, red is definitely the best colour.
All the good teams playing red.
Yeah. It's funny because all in my career, every team I played for up until late, that must have been 31. Blackburn was the first team I signed for who played in blue. Every team before that, Barnsley, Aberdeen, Middlesbrough, Crewe, Alexander, Liverpool, they were all red. So I never ever played in a blue kit until I ended up at Blackburn.
Yeah. So when you were at Liverpool then, you ended up at Crewe. How did that come about then?
Well, I got glandular fever in my last bits of my apprenticeship, sort of just coming up to 18. And Liverpool were and ahhing about whether to keep me on or not. They asked me to stay on and play a reserve game, which I did. Then they asked me to go away on tour which I did. And then he asked me to play in another. But by that time, it was getting a bit silly. You know, they'd had me since I was 11. They should have known what I was like.
Yeah.
And Dario, to be fair to him, had just offered me a 2-year deal. You know, I went up to Crewe, I trained one day, and he offered me a 2-year pro. And that was great for me. So I signed it straight away. I didn't even think twice about it, and left Liverpool at 18 and went to play for Crewe, which turned out to be the best move in my life.
Yeah, it seems like he was a great guy. Yeah, Dario, he obviously had a long time at Crewe.
He was just a great coach.
Yeah,
brilliant coach. He'd look at you and he knew what you were good at and what you couldn't do, and you'd work on what you couldn't do. But in the games, he was clever, where you didn't really have to do what you couldn't do. You know, I couldn't play with me back to goal. I was rubbish with me back to goal because I wasn't big enough or strong enough. And just simple little bits like get on the half turn, come off people. He just taught you the game properly. And if I'm being honest, when I was at Liverpool, it was all geared towards the first team. It was doing jobs for the first team, doing the kit for the first team. And training, if you weren't finished training but the first team had, you had to stop. So there was no real coaching and learning the game.
Yeah.
The first time I ever stopped to think about my game was probably Crewe with Dario.
Yeah, so you had quite a good time there, and then obviously from there you went to Middlesbrough. Who was the manager at Middlesbrough at the time? Was it Lenny Lawrence?
Yeah, it was Lenny. I'd done well at Crewe, and we played Middlesbrough in a pre-season friendly, and I'd scored a couple of goals against them in a 2-2 draw. And obviously Lenny had seen me from then, and I know Ron Bone went to a few games. You know, speaking to him when I joined Middlesbrough, Ron had said he'd been to some games and had recommended me. And then I had a chance to go to Manchester City as well as Middlesbrough. I think Blackburn at the time I mentioned as well. But Middlesbrough were the first ones to put up the money. You know, it was a few quid for me then. I think it was 500 grand. Premier League, it was a big jump for me. But when I got to the club, you know, Lenny was great. I really enjoyed working with Lenny. The club, being in the Premier League was a massive step for me, and it was just great to see the different quality of players. Yeah,
was that the first year of the Premier League as well, 92?
Yeah, it was 92. So, you know, we had some great players. Benny Slaven was still there, even though he fell out with Lenny at the time. Paul Wilkinson, John Hendry, Derek White was there, Willie Faulkner. We had some really good players. Tommy Wright. And we had a good team, and the quality was different. But obviously, the Premier League, the quality is different overall. And we had a real struggle, and ended up getting relegated in my first season there, which wasn't ideal.
Yeah, it's not the best, is it? I mean, especially when all the money was just sort of coming in at the time, with it being the first season of the Premier League and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the club after that, the club went a season, or a couple of seasons where we went downhill. I know Lenny went the season after that. The crowds had dwindled to about, I think I remember 6,000 being at Ayresome Park.
Yeah.
It got a bit dire. You know, we'd sold all the players had gone, all the more experienced players, they'd all gone. And we didn't really replace them. We were playing kids and people who were on the YTSs and having a real struggle up in the Championship. And then obviously Lenny went and Brian Robson came in, which changed the whole complexion of the football club.
Yeah, was it true that Lenny had a bit of a part in bringing Brian Robson to the club then?
I think so, yeah. I mean, Lenny knew he was going, and we all went out for a drink with Lenny.
Yeah.
And in the meeting, Lenny had said, look, we've come to an agreement. I won't be the manager no more. And told us that Brian Robson was going to be the manager, which, you know, whilst you're sad to see Lenny go, someone like Brian Robson come to the football club, and the ambition that Steve Gibson had, you knew that there was some exciting times ahead.
Yeah, I must have. At the time, I couldn't actually believe it, because he was still playing. He was sort of in his last years at Man United. And when I heard he was coming to be player manager, I was like, it was just unbelievable. When him coming to the club. Yeah,
to get someone in, Steve must have promised him a lot of stuff, and because Steve was really ambitious, and if you're bringing someone like Brian into the club, you're not just going to float along. So, like I say, we knew it was exciting times at the club. Steve wanted to really lift the profile, and that started with the building of the Selnet Stadium, as it was then, but the Riverside. So the club just changed from that season. Lenny went. to the season we had in the Championship with Brian, to then the new stadium after we got promotion, and to get promotion in that season with Brian, to make sure that when the new stadium was ready, it was going to host Premier League football, was just massive for the football club. It was massive.
Yeah, I think I remember at the time that was sort of one of the big factors for Brian coming to the club, obviously with the new ground and things like that. And obviously his sort of influence managed to bring some great players along with him.
Robbo was frightening. Because of what he'd done in the game and his standing in the game and how respected he was. Literally, he could have signed anyone. And it started off, we signed, Nigel Pearson came and Clayton Blackmore, Gary Walsh, Neil Cox. But then when we got up and we got the new stadium, we got in the Premier League, it went up again. Nick Barmby was the first to come and sign. And then obviously you had the likes of Janino, Ravanelli, Emerson. Literally anyone could have walked through the door at that time. And Middlesbrough were able to compete with anyone in the country to get players in. And, you could see that with the signing of the Ravanellis and the Janinos. They were just unbelievable signings.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a good time for the club. One of the first ones was Neil Cox. I think he was the first £1 million sign, and then after that it just sort of went crazy, didn't it, really?
Yeah, it did.
Ravanelli, yeah.
It was frightening. If you look at Ravanelli now, I think, what did we get him for? £7.5 million. I think he was top scorer when he won the Champions League or the European Cup the season before with Juventus. To get someone like that, you're looking at a Messi or a Ronaldo, and imagine how much money that had cost. It was, to get Rav, he was on a fortune. He broke the wage structure of the Premier League to get him, but you would expect that with someone who just won the European Cup and was top scorer in it. So to come from Juventus to Middlesbrough was a massive show of intent from the chairman and from the manager as well. And that was, he was brilliant. What a finisher he was, Ravanelli. Best finisher I've seen, I think.
Yeah.
Ed Case, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
He was a proper character, but loved him to bits. But a footballer, if you want a centre forward, you want it like him. Great movement, great finisher, and worked really hard at being a footballer. Very selfish, but you expect that from the top strikers.
Yeah, definitely a bit of an ego, but the ability to go with it.
Yeah, he backed it up. It doesn't matter how he was around there. He backed it up. He scored 30 odd goals, I think, in that season, which was fantastic for us. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, he was one of our great goal scorers, definitely. Do you still speak to anyone from that team then? Have you spoke to Ravanelli?
I've spoke to Rav a couple of times. He's been over and he sent me a message, or his messages through people who he was with. I did come close. I think he was close to getting the manager's job at Bradford, and I'd been sounded out about whether I'd like to go and help him with it. But that didn't come off. Janino, I speak when he's over here. I'll either message him or see him, which is nice, But Nick Barmby's the same. Keep in touch with Nick if I see him.
Yeah.
But there's Curtis Fleming, people like that. Curtis is a good mate of mine. Still see him around, and he's obviously worked with me a couple of times at Hartlepool, and it's been that was a real close knit group, and there's a lot of friendships. Robbie Mustoe, I'd speak to Robbie if I ever see him again, and he's doing great for himself. So there's a lot of people. Paul Wilkinson I still speak to. John Hendry I still see every day. Bernie Slave and I'll go and have a coffee with.
Yeah.
But these are all people who've, even I was there 6.5 years, nearly 7 years, and there's people from when I first signed for the club who I keep in touch with, to people who in my last year at the club I still keep in touch with. So it was a really, really great team spirit right at the time I was there.
Yeah, I think at the time there was a good team spirit there. There was one or two of the foreign signings, should we say, weren't the best fit in the squad.
In terms of team spirit, the local lads and Junie and Emerson, to be fair to them, Ravanelli was his own man, and you sort of had to give him a little bit of leeway and let him get away with whatever he was saying, and because you understood he had an ego and he'd done it, he'd been there and done it. But in terms of the core of the squad, it was really, really close knit. Nigel Pearson and Neil Cox, Clayton Blackmore, people like that. We're all proper good lads, and we all stuck together. And you always get one or two who were on the outside of it. But when I say the team spirit in general, it was the core people who ran the club, really. We're all together.
Yeah. So who was your sort of the player you were closest to at that sort of time at Middlesbrough then?
It was Nick. So Nick Barmby I was closest to Nick. like I say, he was the first one to come, and he was similar to me in the way he played. Similar
Yeah.
stature, and you always learn off people. The best thing that happened to me was Nick signing, because he took my game to a different level. I could see what he could do, and I used to say to myself, what can he do that I can't do, or vice versa, and you'd look at him and you'd watch. And it was the same with everyone who come in like that. The bigger, stronger players have their way of playing, and the smaller footballers, if you like, have their way of playing. And it was the same when Junie come. Junie was, again, totally different to me and Nick, the way he played. He was an individual. He liked to go past people. He liked to keep the ball. Didn't necessarily pass it when he could have, whereas Nick was intelligent, and Nick would always do what he thought he was going to do. But Junie would make things happen because he was off the cuff, and sometimes that makes it really hard to read. But as a footballer, wow, he was. You couldn't comprehend what he was doing at 5'6" and probably 8 stone wet through. To see what he was doing on a football pitch after he got acclimatized to English football, because he worked really hard when he first came. It was just incredible to watch. And there's some of the things that I look at him doing, and you're never going to be able to do them yourself because you're not that way. But I don't know whether it's the Brazilian mentality or what, but he was just incredible. Some of the things he used to do in training, not just on the pitch on a match day, but in training, he'd done some outrageous things.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good time when he came to the club. It just unfortunately it was a bit because yourself and Nick Barnby, the midget gems as they were known at the time, it didn't really work out when Juninho came in. So obviously that meant Nick Barnby was leaving, but it was still a good time.
The bad thing for me was I never got to play with them both. So myself, Nick, and Juninho never played together.
Yeah.
It was always Juninho and Nick, or Juninho and me, and it was never the three of us. And I'd love to have seen, the three of us playing. And I think it would have been hard for people to stop, because we all drifted about, we all roamed about, and we could all score a goal or see a pass. But he had to have a free role, Junie. He had to be allowed to be a free spirit and go wherever he wanted, because that's what he was like. He'd go and get the ball off the back four, or he would pop up in midfield, or you'd see him up front. He was just a top footballer, but you wouldn't really put him in a hole and say, right, I just want you to run up and down the right and do your job defensively. You couldn't do that with Junie. He had too much ability going forward to pigeonhole him into any sort of defensive structure.
Yeah, he was sort of like that old style sort of number 10 player. Like to be sort of all over the place. Yeah,
he was a top player, and certainly one of the best I ever played with.
Yeah, there was some definitely good exciting times there. A few cup finals, obviously relegation, but we had a great attacking team at the time there. Just maybe wasn't the strongest defensively.
That's what we had a spell, I think, under Robbo where we lost the game at Forest 4-0, then we lost to QPR 5-0.
Yeah. And
then I think the game after we beat Swindon 6-0.
Yeah, to go back top of the league, yeah.
Yeah, and you just think, that can't happen. It can't happen. How can you go and score 6 against 1 and get beat 4 and 5? But I think generally that season we were head and shoulders above any other team in the league, apart from Forest, who were the next closest to us. But then, like I say, in the Premier League, we had some really good wins. We beat some teams 4s and 5s, and I think I remember doing Derby 6-0 at the Riverside. So to do that in the Premier League, you obviously got something right. Maybe we weren't the best defensively, but saying that, it's a balance, and you can't just blame the defence for letting goals in. It's a team ethic, and it's
definitely,
especially now when you see how teams work. And if you watch Liverpool, they all defend, whether it's Mo Salah or Sadio Mane, Robbie Firmino, they all defend. It's a proper unit, whereas maybe we were a going forward unit and a defending unit, and we didn't really have that bond between we're all attacking and we're all defending.
Yeah, I mean, we did have some really top defenders and sort of top good skill, like the likes of Nigel Pearson, Derek White. Like at the time, they were really experienced, really good defenders. It's just obviously, we were a bit more on the going forward side, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, when Gianluca Festa came, he made it. He was a bit more solid because he was a proper defender. tough as nails. You know,
we
had some good defenders. Curtis Fleming was a really good defender. He'd tackle a brick wall for you. It was with Nigel and Gianluca Festa and Steve Vickers and Derek White. We did have some capable people. But for one reason or another, whether it was we didn't give them enough protection or whether, I know in Nigel's case, his legs were going a little bit, but he was still a fantastic defender. Any balls into the box, Nigel would head it away, and he was a threat at set pieces for us as well. So, yeah, people have said that to me before about, you know, if we'd have had a better defence, but I think it's, you know, everyone has to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it did end up in relegation, but it was a really good time, especially for me being a big Middlesbrough fan. It was a brilliant time to watch. Not so much the ending, but
no, the ending was obviously the 3 points made a massive difference. So if you look at the season as a whole, we'd done just enough to stay up, but they took the 3 points off us, and we ended up getting relegated, which for us was devastating, because the rumours were at the end of that season, so we'd been in the cup finals and we ended up getting relegated, but the rumours were we were getting Roberto Carlos, or, you know, Paul Ince would probably come a bit quicker. There was rumours of Romario and Bebeto, and all these different people could have come. I mean, Juninho was big mates with Roberto Carlos, and I was talking to him one day and he'd confirmed that was true. You know, he was going to come. So listen, I might have been at the club then if they're signing people like that, but it would have been fun to see them all come and to see what Middlesbrough would have looked like if we'd have stayed up that season.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was definitely a big thing at the time, sort of us going down. If we'd have stayed up, who knows what could have happened.
Well, in the end, we lost players instead of adding to what we had. We ended up losing players. I know Rav stayed for a little bit, but didn't really want to. Juninho had obviously gone. Emerson had stayed for a little bit, but ended up moving on. And they were three massive players to lose, and to replace them would have cost hundreds of millions now.
Yeah, definitely. Emerson was definitely a top player when his head was in the game. And he was
typical Brazilian. Brazilian. He loved saying typical. He didn't like hot showers. So you know, whereas Juninho needed a sunbed if it was in the winter, and he needed to feel good and get a bit of the vitamins in him. Emerson loved the cold, and that was where he differed from other Brazilians. But in his mindset, he was a bit of Brazilian, flamboyant, tricks, skill, probably the strongest person I've played with. You know, you could give him the ball and he could just run upfield with it, and people would be bouncing off him all over. So he was a right outlet. If you were winning a game 1-0 or 2-0, you could give the ball to Emerson and he'd just go and keep it for 3 or 4 minutes before anyone could get it off him. So he was, and he got stuck into life as well on Teesside. You know, he wasn't one of these who moaned and wanted to go home and moaned about the climate and stuff. He just wholeheartedly got himself stuck into it. And I think that was partly because obviously he brought his cousin Fabio, he signed for us as well. And Juninho was there. So that there was a good little group of them where they could all live together or live close to each other. Families could speak to each other and see each other regularly. And I think that made a massive difference for them settling. Yeah,
then obviously Branco came over. I mean, the less said about him, the better probably, but he was definitely experienced.
But unbelievable. Again, you see someone like him and you think, wow, but to see him living, you know, he just liked to laugh. He just wanted to laugh. He must have been, he said he was 38 when he came, but he must have been 40 odd, maybe mid 40s. Could strike a ball still unbelievably well. Loved to smoke. You know, he would smoke probably 20, 30 cigarettes a day. Just, again, a party person. Loved going out, loved restaurants, loved drinking, loved eating, loved just having a laugh. I don't know how long he stayed for. And it's hard to believe that he was actually at Middlesbrough. You know, when you look at some of the players that played for Middlesbrough during that time, I mean, even just after me, it's incredible, really. You could make a proper World 11 out of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, Juninho was one of the best skill-wise. Is it true that the free kick in that certain video, it was actually yourself that scored the goal?
It was. I mean, unbeknownst to us, but we were there for ages trying to get it right, and there was a couple that had gone in, and but they wanted one right in the top corner, and it was, we must have been there 20 minutes after training trying to get one perfect, and he couldn't do it. And then I'd come and hit one, and it just so happened that one was perfect, and it went right in. But they obviously didn't show. You just seen the flight of the ball over the wall and going in the. I could tell it was mine by the way it had gone in the goal. And I used to pull his leg about it a little bit as well after the thing had come out. But he always says it was his free kick. It wasn't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a great free kick, I must say. Straight in the top corner, right where you want it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the free kicks. I used to take all the free kicks really, and it was something that I'd practiced, and we'd stay out. I mean, me and him would stay out after training and just hit some free kicks. Normally on a Friday, if there was a game Saturday, we just practice on a Friday, do 15 to 20 minutes, just hitting balls over the wall.
Yeah. So one of the best sort of moments at Middlesbrough, obviously you're most famous for scoring the very first goal at the Riverside. Can you remember that? And obviously, what sort of the impact it had at the time?
I can't. It was a good move. Nick got in down the left-hand side. And like I said before, you knew what he was going to do with it before he'd done it. So the pass was on. I knew he'd seen me. He had a little stumble up, I think. And then obviously he played the ball to me. And I remember it coming across. And it was one of them that's coming across here a little bit. They're tough sometimes when they're coming straight across here. And as I've gone to hit it, it's just clipped the outside of my left toe as I've planted my foot and just bobbled up a little bit. And as I put my foot through it, it went high, and I didn't mean it to go high or that high. But the clip, it just lifted it off the floor a little bit. But it looked, when you see the goal now, it looks miles better than it should have looked, because it looks like it flew right in the top corner. I didn't mean it to go that high. I just meant it to go in, hit the target and go in low. But listen, it was lovely to see it go in. And I didn't think nothing of it, if I'm honest. And at half time, Robbie Musto had said to me, "You lucky bugger." And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, that's the first goal, isn't it?" And I never really thought about it. But obviously now, wherever I went, and Borough fans have always been brilliant with me. They always send me all kinds of letters. And in 90% of the letters, 95% of the letters, it mentions the first goal in it. And even now when I'm out and I'm walking around town or in the Borough, it's a lot of the people, that's what they mention to me. You know, you scored the first goal. And so it's something I'm really proud to have done. It was just a great time overall. You know, my time at the club was, apart from the first probably 2 seasons, it was just nothing but everything I'd wanted to do as a player, as a young boy growing up. I managed to do at Middlesbrough, you know, playing a cup final. And the only disappointment I had was he didn't win one, because I'd love to have done that and been a part of the first team that had won something for the football club. And we should have, really, you know, whether it was the FA Cup against Chelsea or whether it was the League Cup against Leicester City. We should have won one of them, because we were better than Leicester, and we proved the season that we were, you know, we could have beat Chelsea on our day.
Yeah, I think the first one against Leicester, we'd actually played them a few weeks before, didn't we, at Filbert Street, and we got the win there. Everyone expected us to just turn up at the final and win. That
was why we didn't, because that day we were 3-0 up after about half an hour at their place. Juninho was outstanding. He was unplayable. We could have beat them 6 or 7. And I think when Martin O'Neill had seen that game, he knew he couldn't just let Juninho have the freedom of everywhere. So Pontus Kamara, who was he wasn't a great footballer, but he was a good defender and a man-to-man marker. He just put him on Juninho and told him to follow him all over. And that's all he did at Wembley. And you know, Junie tried really hard, but couldn't really influence the game because he was stuck to him like glue. But even then, you know, we go 1-0 up, Rav scores in extra time, and we should see it out, really. We had enough. If we'd have had a bit more experience of being in cup finals like that, we'd have just ran the clock down. You know, MLS ended up scoring in the last minute to get a replay. And even in the replay, we should have won the replay. You know, we had plenty of chances in that replay as well.
Yeah, we had a couple of chances, I think, from Juninho, Emerson, people like that. But I still say that was a foul by Heskey, even though it probably wasn't. On the
I mean, I'd love to think it was, but Sometimes you get them, don't you? Sometimes you don't. I think you probably stand more chance of getting it nowadays than you would back then.
Yeah, I think I sounded a bit like Ali Brownlee at the time. I was shouting and screaming that it was a foul. Everyone's like, "Shut up, you idiot!"
Yeah, it was disappointing because we got so close, and it's at least we didn't lose, because losing the FA Cup final was devastating. It was a horrible place to lose. We'd had a couple of problems leading up to that game as well. We'd had a fixture backlog to get in.
Yeah,
Rav was struggling with a hamstring injury. So we had one or two bits that, we were, as a team, it was starting to unravel a little bit. There was a bit of an argument cup final morning. Rav had said something in the paper about leaving Middlesbrough because we'd been relegated at Leeds.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best atmosphere, and I don't think we give ourselves the best chance to go and win that game.
Didn't you have a bit of a scrap with Neil Cox on the morning, was it?
Well, there was a few, I think, in the morning. There was a bit of handbags, and you're thinking, we've got a cup final here this afternoon. It's not ideal preparation.
Yeah.
But like I say, it was at that time then when it was just starting to unravel a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely sort of proved that after the first 42 seconds, and it was that sort of game over, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what Ben Roberts was in goal, which I didn't realise at the time, and until I look back on it. We had Mark Schwarzer, who was obviously a top keeper, and I look at that goal and I always think, Ben dived backwards a little bit, and I think if that was Mark Schwarzer, he'd probably caught it or tipped it over at the very least.
Yeah.
But to go one down after what had gone on the week before with relegation, and it was, and obviously what had happened in the morning, it was a real kick in the guts. I think to try and get going, and we almost pulled one back. I think Fester had the goal disallowed for an offside to get back to 1-1. But after that, really, it was, the game sort of half passed you by. It was a disappointing one. Disappointing for me. I think I came off after about 65 minutes. I'd played on the left that day. And it was the FA Cup final for me was a real disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, something as a kid, you sort of always looking for the FA Cup final. When we got there, like you say, with the relegation the week before, it was a totally different build-up, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And, all we were saying before, it was, look, what's gone on's gone on. Let's try and put it out of our minds. We'll have a good blast at this. It's a chance to make a name for yourself. Go out and do it. But I don't know why it wasn't a lack of effort. It was just on the day we looked a little bit. We played too many games, if I'm honest. We played a lot of games leading up to that, and all the lads were shattered. Yeah,
like I say, it was to have a good game, but once the first score went in, that was it really, and then obviously they scored again later on.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, we got to a final the season after when Gazza joined the club. Was it true that did he get a medal or something, and that you didn't get a medal?
We did. It was Gazza's first game.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was our third cup final in a row. So we'd done League Cup final, FA Cup final, then League Cup final again. And I'd done all right in the games. I'd scored a few goals leading up to it. And then I wouldn't sign a new contract. The club had offered me a new contract. I wouldn't sign it. We were still negotiating it, but Robbo had said, look, if you sign this contract, and I said no. And then he said, well, I'm going to, I have to keep people happy who are going to be here next year. So you'll miss out on the game, which was devastating. Mm-hmm. And he told me this when we got to Bisham Abbey, the hotel. So that's football. I went back. I was rooming with Neil Maddison at the time. And then Gazza knocked on the door and he said, look, I've heard what's happening. And he said, I've just been in with Robbo. I don't feel it's right for me to be involved. It's my first game. Yous have earned it. I'm going to go and tell him I don't want to play. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, it's nothing to do with you. And then he said to me, well, look, we're here for 4 days. Maddo's playing. Why don't you come and room with me? I'm only sub and you're not involved. So we'll have a laugh. We wouldn't want to room with Gazza, you know what I mean, for 4 days. And it was brilliant. So we had a great 4 days, trained, and obviously I'm disappointed all the time. I was there. And then after the game, we got beat, and Gazza just come up to me and he went, I want you to have this medal. And I said, I don't want it, Paul. And he said, no, I haven't earned this. He said, I want you to have it. I think he'd come on as sub. So I didn't take it. And then afterwards, there was like a bit of an after party. And he brought me the medal and he'd give it to me and he'd signed it inside. So he just said, best wishes, Gaza. And he said, look, I want you to have it. So I took it and I've got the medal. So
yeah, it was great to touch that, yeah.
It is, but if you know him, he's the most generous man you'll ever meet in your life. He lives for two things, and that's to make people laugh and play football. And without them two things in his life, you can see what happens to him. He's such a top lad. You wouldn't hear anyone in football have a bad word to say about him.
Yeah, so I think it's a shame not to see him in football in some capacity, because you can see that when he's not in football, that's when most of his problems arise.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll admit he's his own worst enemy. He does. There's no line with Gaza because he gets away with everything. He will take it a little bit far, but if he ever thought he'd upset you or he'd embarrass you with something he'd done, he'd be devastated. Because all he just wanted to do was make people laugh. That's just what he was like. And I think he'll admit when he's had jobs in football, he's been his own worst enemy. He does everything to extremes, and that's if he's fitness, he's 7 days a week, 4 or 5 hours a day. But if he's drinking, he's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day probably. He just does everything to extremes. He can't. There's nothing moderation with him, and that's the type of personality he is.
Yeah, I spoke to Andy Campbell, and he was telling me about the story of the team bus. And then I obviously remember reading tapes at the time as well.
Well, he'd done loads. That was just the tip of the iceberg. He'd be into everything. He was unbelievable. You never knew what was going to happen from one day to the next with him. He could literally do anything. So you always had to be on your guard. Yeah,
definitely. I heard a few stories of him at the World Cup with Bobby Robson. He was out playing tennis or something like before. Tennis, definitely a few stories. Yeah, he just couldn't sleep.
There's millions of stories. I think someone's doing a book now because he'd phoned me about it. But there's loads and loads of stories. You speak to any player who's played with him, he could probably talk to you for an hour, 2 hours. I mean, my after dinners could just be Gaza, and I was only there for not even 6 months maybe with him. I roomed with him all the time. I was there and he was there, and I could say, honestly, there's so many stories I could say about Gaza. That'll be a completely different podcast.
Yeah, you could have a 3-hour one definitely just on Gaza.
You could, yeah, you could. Easily. You could.
Yeah, so not long after that final, we ended up getting promotion. You scored a few goals in the last game. You got promoted, and you left to go to Aberdeen. How did that one come about?
Well, we got promoted, and we went to New York. The club took us to New York, and they were trying to get me to sign a new deal, but they thought because I was at the club for ages that I would accept anything, and I wasn't on anywhere near what any of the other lads were on. I was there as a young kid. And I told them what I wanted, and my agent had told them what I wanted. And it was the same as Mickelbeck. I think Mickelbeck was getting what I asked for. And they wouldn't, they just sort of laughed it out. So I ended up going and signing for Aberdeen. I was at Bosman. I didn't ever want to leave. So they knew I didn't want to leave. And I think they tried to play on it a little bit. But Robbo had said to me, look, don't sign anything. If something comes up, just let me know. And I'll speak to you in the summer. So anyway, the Aberdeen thing came up. I got what I wanted off Aberdeen. If Aberdeen could pay that, Middlesbrough could have, that's for sure. And I'd phoned Robbo, and it was a Sunday. I was going up Aberdeen on the Monday to finalise it all. And I phoned Robbo, and I just said, Brian, it's Iggy. And he said, who? I said, it's Iggy. He said, who? I said, Craig Hignett. He said, oh, yeah, Iggy. I said, oh, just let you know, things are sorted with Aberdeen, and I'm going to go up and chat to them and finalise it tomorrow, but you've asked me to give you a ring before. And he went, oh, yeah. He said, thanks. He said, all the best. I hope it works out. And that was it. So I thought, right. So I went up to Aberdeen and I signed. And then about a month and a bit later, I came back and I trained at Middlesbrough because Aberdeen didn't have a game. He'd give me a couple of days to come back to see the family. So I trained at Middlesbrough, and he pulled me and he said to me, you're a funny one. I said, why? He said, well, I told you to ring me before you'd done anything, and you didn't. I said, I did. He said, no, you didn't. I said, I rang you on the Sunday before I went up on the Monday. And he went, why are you ringing me on a Sunday? You know I'll be pissed on a Sunday. He said, I can't remember it. So that was, I had to laugh about it, you know what I mean? There was no harm done, but I didn't stay up there too long, Aberdeen. I ended up coming back down. John Hendry brought me to Barnsley.
Yeah, I think you were sort of only there about 6 months, was it, before you came to Barnsley?
Yeah.
But did you actually move up to Aberdeen then, or were you just sort of stayed over?
No, I moved up,
yeah.
bought a house and everything. It was tough because I just got divorced at the time, and I was seeing the kids near enough every day, and then to go from seeing them every day to, I actually phoned Aberdeen up after I'd signed and said, look, I've made a mistake. I want to cancel the contract before I start. I don't think the kids thing's going to work out for me. But they promised me days off on a Monday, and I could get flights back from Aberdeen to Teesside and stuff like that. But when I got up there, unless they took me off at half time, I couldn't make the last plane to Teesside. So I ended up driving 6 hours here, 6 hours back, just to see the kids for half an hour. And it was no good. It just wasn't working for me. So then John Hendry had phoned me up. And again, Man City, Joe Royal had phoned me up. I told Aberdeen I didn't want to stay and I wanted to go. And ended up moving to Barnsley for, I think it was £1 million. Considering they hadn't paid any money for me, Aberdeen, and they got me wages plus more back, that's for sure.
Yeah, you had a bit of a memorable spell there. I remember you got to the playoff final playing against Ipswich.
Yeah, we did. That was a tough one because the season before, John had left at the end of the season, and John was building a good side, and I was gutted for John. But Dave Bassett came in, and he was brilliant. Harry was really good. Brought some players in, experienced players. We ended up we got in the playoffs, beat Birmingham away 4-0, then got beat 2-1 at home, and then played Ipswich in the final. And we were, I think, if you say it's an own goal, I always class it as my goal.
Yeah, well, it was going in. I think it just hit the keeper on the back of the head. But
yeah, it hit the bar, and hit the keeper, and went in. And then we got 1-0. Then Tony Mowbray scored a header to bring it 1-1, and then we got a penalty just before half time. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I didn't take it, because we had an agreement. Darren Barnard had a great left foot, and he was the penalty taker. But if he missed one, I'd become the penalty taker. But we also had an agreement where if I got brought down, I'd take my own penalties. And I don't know why I didn't. I'd asked him if he wanted to take it, and he said, yeah. And sometimes you can see in people's eyes whether they fancy it or not. And I could see he was panicking a little bit. And he missed it. Richard Wright, to be fair, saved it. He didn't miss the target. But it wasn't a great pen. And then you go in at half time, and we were a little bit down. And obviously Ipswich's tails were up. If we'd have gone in 2-1, then we had the team who could probably hurt Ipswich if they come out and attacked us. Yeah. But as it was, they ended up going 3-1 up. I scored a penalty to make it 3-2. And then we have a great chance with a header. A lad called Georgie Ristov has a header from 6 yards, where if he puts it anywhere left or right on the floor, it's a goal. And he heads it straight at Richard Wright, who made a great save, to be fair. But it was the keeper's height. I think if we'd have probably scored that, we'd have won the game. But then later on, we were pushing, and they end up scoring a fourth to make it 4-2. So score flattered them a little bit. But that was gutting. It was devastating, because we knew, again, money's a massive thing in football. And if we'd have won it and been in the Premier League, then, I'd have probably ended up staying at Barnsley. But as it was, Barnsley's money was cut. And Dave had to wheel and deal the next season, which seen me get sold to Blackburn.
Yeah, so you say from there you went to Blackburn. It was about just under £2.5 million, obviously, which was quite a decent amount. You had a bit of a good spell at Blackburn. Was it Graham Souness was the manager at the time?
Graham Souness was one of my obviously one of my childhood heroes, playing for that Liverpool team that I watched, and it was a real thrill playing for Graham. Real good company, built a really good side. I mean, the side we had, I was 31 at the time, so I was no spring chicken. But we had some really good players in that side, and we went on to win promotion. And then in the Premier League the following year, we finished 6th and won the Carling Cup. or the League Cup. But the team we had was, it was a really good team. We had some of the best players I've played with. Again, people like Damien Duff, who was unbelievable. Andy Cole, Dwight York, Mark Hughes, they were all on the side. Henning Berg, David Dunn, Matt Janssen. Just really, really good players. And Two-Guy, forget Two-Guy, what a player he was.
Definitely had a great strike on him.
We were solid all over. People like Lucas Neal and Craig Shaw, centre half, Lorenzo Amoruso with Henning Berg, and Stig Bjornaby at left back. So it was just a really good side. Jason McAteer and Keith Gillespie as well. So you could go right through them, players who'd all played for the countries and done well. And it was, again, great team spirit. I mean, the captain, Guy Flickoff, the captain, was fantastic. Just a really good set of lads who, again, we all keep in touch with each other. And we had some good success. And Graham, as a manager, was great to work with.
Yeah, and like I say, you won the cup. I think you beat Tottenham 2-1. You managed to get yourself on the pitch towards the end of the game.
I was disappointed, actually. I was sub for the game, and I played the 5 up to that, and then was sub for that game, which was disappointing. But I ended up coming on. I don't know. I think I got about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I don't know. I'm not sure. Which again was great. But the big thing for me was, I actually played a cup final and won one, and you could feel what it was like to actually win a cup final. It was at the Millennium Stadium.
Yeah.
All I'd been used to was getting in cup finals, playoff finals, and been on the losing side. And there's not a worse place to lose. But to win one, and to feel what that was like was fabulous.
Yeah, at Blackburn, it sort of ended up, you got in, you went out on loan, you managed to get injured, I think. So you sort of got released at the end of your contract at Blackburn. Was that disappointing for you at the time?
I'd had almost 4 years at Blackburn, and we'd had a great time, and I broke my leg the season before at Coventry, then got back in the team. I think I played the last game for Blackburn at Spurs away and won 4-1 and scored. And then Mickey, Dave Bassett he was like director of football or football operations manager at Leicester.
Yeah.
And I'd been on loan at Coventry where I broke my leg. And then the season after, like the pre-season, Dave Bassett got in touch with me and said, look, do you fancy? I'd started pre-season at Blackburn again. I had a year left. And asked me if I fancy going to Leicester. And I did. I ended up signing for Leicester in the Premier League. Again, people like Les Ferdinand, Matty Elliott, Muzzy Izzet, had some really good players. But managed to get relegated. I was only there a season. Loved my time there. But we ended up getting relegated. And towards the end of that season, I went out on loan back to Crewe. My lad was playing at Crewe at the time. He was training at Crewe. And I'd seen Dario quite a lot. And he said, look, why don't you come back here and just play some games for us? They were in the Championship, struggling a little bit. So I ended up going and playing the last 2 months at Crewe.
Yeah, I think, like you say, you didn't have many games at Leicester, but you did manage to score a goal against Arsenal. I think it was an equalising goal as well.
Yeah, it was. It was. I think it was the Invincibles, that team. They were. That's when your career's winding down. I think I was 34 at the time, nearly 35, and when you lose a yard of pace, I was always quite quick, and you notice when you're losing a little bit of pace, and that was the game really. The Arsenal game was the game where I thought, because I always felt I had time, and then suddenly someone's on top of you, and you couldn't get away from anyone, and that Arsenal side was so quick. I think they were all quick, but it shouldn't really have been a problem, but it was becoming a problem, and I knew myself, I wasn't quite. My legs were going a little bit at 34, almost 35, but I was still fit. I could still run about. So I ended up being in and out, but I didn't want to just fade away, if that makes sense. I wanted to go and play and play as many games as I could. So that's why I went to Crewe and then came back to Leicester. I only had a year at Leicester. Then I signed for Leeds, which was a great move. Came out of the blue a little bit. Went and done pre-season. Signed a month to month, and I was there for pre-season, and I left in September. I think I left the end of September, October, because the club just didn't have money. You know, they'd asked me to stay for the rest of the season for nothing. And I'd do a lot of things, but I wouldn't play for nothing. And it was a great club, Leeds, you know, again, some great lads there. But I ended up going and signing for David Hodgson at Darlington. I just thought, no, I want to go home. I want to stay at home. You know, they train not far from me. And it was just nice to be home and not travelling and, you know, being with the family. And so that was, you know, Darlington had, I think I scored 9 in 18 games. I only played 18 games for them. Come the end of the season. And then I moved to Apollon Limassol. That came out of the blue, really. I got a phone call to say, look, what do you think about Cyprus? And I said, well, what about it? He said, well, why don't you go? These have asked about you. Why don't you go pre-season? Go and see what you think. And so I ended up going to Germany and met the team. And I had a week in Germany, training and playing, and really enjoyed it. The manager was a lad called Bernd Stanger, who I think he managed Estonia in the end after Limassol. A German. Went to Cyprus, loved everything about it. Absolutely loved everything about it. Was there this season, won the league, qualified for the Champions League. And that was me at 35, almost 36. I loved it, just absolutely loved it. And it was something, playing abroad has always appealed to me. And to go and do it right at the end it was a bit of a thrill. But then after that season, I thought about hanging them up, you know, 36. I had a couple of months back home, and then Danny Wilson, you know, I'd phoned Danny and said, look, can I come in and train? And he said, yeah, come in. And when I went in, I trained at Hartlepool for 2-3 months. Got really fit again, and Danny said, look, why don't you play? You know, you've still got what you've got. He said, I think it'll be good for you and it'll be good for us. So I ended up signing for Danny. And bearing in mind, I trained for 3 months, didn't have an injury, trained every day. And then in my second game, I pulled a hamstring, and that was like near the end of the season. So I missed the rest of the season. And by that time I was 39. 38, 39. Thought about playing till 40, but then just thought, what's the point? You know, I could go and coach at Middlesbrough, so I'd been offered a job coaching the academy lads at Middlesbrough, and decided to go and do that instead of having another season at 40 where I might not have played, I might not have, you know, Danny was great, but I just thought, you know, it's time for the next chapter, if you like, going coaching, because coaching was always something I was interested in. Yeah,
definitely. Did you go on and play a few games for Billingham Synthonia as well while you were coaching?
I did.
Just before?
No, that was that. I think I was just before. I was doing a bit of work for 5 Live, and I was travelling around doing some games and some commentary. And then I just thought, you know, on a Saturday, some Saturdays I was bored, and Stewie Colby was my mate, and Chris Rooney, who was manager, became a mate. And I went and played a few games for them. Not loads, but I went and played a few games for them. And then there was like some work commitments where I couldn't make the Saturdays. And then I signed for Spennymoor, and I had a couple of games for Spennymoor, I think. Because my Jay Ainsley there, I just thought I don't need it, you know, and I go and coach and do it properly. I played for when I was 40.
Yeah, like you said, I knew about Middlesbrough, and then you were with Colin Cooper, I think it was at the time.
Yeah, Coops were great. Coops got the job at Hartlepool. Hartlepool was the club whilst they'd been in. It was a tough one, but we started to pick up, and then I got poached. I ended up leaving and going to Middlesbrough with Aitor Karanka. Karanka had just signed at the club. He'd gone through. I think Jamie Clapham was his last assistant, who he got rid of.
Yeah.
I had a meeting with him, met him at his house, and got on all right with him, and then I got offered the job. Obviously, that was disappointing for Colin, and it was disappointing for me as well a little bit, because Colin was my mate and I didn't want to let him down. But obviously, going to Middlesbrough as assistant manager was massive for me.
Yeah, definitely a great move for yourself.
And he didn't stand in my way. You know, he was good about it. Hartlepool were brilliant about it. And he ended up going and being Aitor's assistant.
Yeah, I mean, Hartlepool were doing quite well at the time. It was disappointing for a lot of the Hartlepool fans. So he went out to Middlesbrough till up to December, I think it was. What happened towards the end? Was it just a general idea?
No, I think within a month I'd made a mistake. Sometimes you just know what people are like, and you know, I've never worked in an environment like that before, where people were, if anything was good, it was them. If it was bad, it was your fault, or it was his fault, or it was their fault, and it was very it was very regimented. You know, I couldn't get breakfast unless Aitor was eating with us. We couldn't get dinner unless Aitor was ready to get dinner. It was just a weird. I couldn't work like that. I'm always if my opinion wasn't agreed with, then you know, he wouldn't talk to you for a couple of days or 3 days. And I'm not like that. You know, I'm there to help him.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be manager. I just wanted to help him. And if he needed any help with anything, you know, didn't know a player or didn't know this, I'd go and do it. I was a sounding board. When I got there, that the atmosphere wasn't great. There was players who weren't happy. But bit by bit, you know, you talk to them and you let them know, listen, this is what a manager's like, but it doesn't mean that you're ruled out. You train hard, and the way he is, he'll put you back in. He just wants to see you. And bit by bit, you know, they've got someone to talk to then, because I don't think they had anyone to talk to before I got there. So I felt we were all right. But Aitor's one of these people who, if he wants a signing, then he needs it now. And he had a list of signings, and then, unless they were in that order, he would get really frustrated, and he wouldn't sign number 3 on the list without signing number 1. Football doesn't work like that. Certainly in England, it doesn't work like that. And I think he was it was hard for him to understand the roles, because obviously coming from Spain, a head coach is just that. He just goes and coaches the team and the players who are brought in. Whereas the manager has full say in players who come into the club, and I think that's what. So some players who wanted to come, the club wanted Aitor to go and speak to them and to phone them, and he was like, well, no, I'm only the head coach. I don't want to do that. Why should I do that? That's not my title. And I just think it was a bit of communication that was needed, really. But in the end, it was a Blackburn game, I think, that brought it all to a head. I was getting fed up, and I was biting my tongue a little bit when I was going in work. And then it just all kicked off after Blackburn. They scored a goal that shouldn't have been. Dimmy got fouled. Aitor shook a 4th official. I tried to stop him from doing it, but ended up getting sent off. And it all hell broke loose. And then after it, he felt that I wasn't loyal to him and his staff. And he asked me where I was when the fighting was going on. There was no fighting. It was handbags. And then just said I wasn't loyal to him or the football club. And I lost my head a little bit, because I've been at the football club nearly 20 years and told him what I thought. And then he went for me, and then I went for him. So I didn't actually punch him. I know reports have come out that said I didn't punch him. I think he told people I punched him, because it was easier to get me finished at the club if he said I'd punched him. I didn't punch him. I just went for him and was stopped. But then after that, you know, I'm one of them. All right, that's happened. I'm sure he's going to phone me up and apologise, because he was out of order. And then the Sunday I went in, and he didn't say nothing. In fact, I set training up, and he took me off the training ground. He got Leo to come down and take me off the training ground. Didn't say anything to me, and that was the last I'd ever spoke to him. I never spoke to him again since that. I spoke to Neil Bowser. And then I agreed. I didn't want to work with him anymore. I couldn't. And it was gutting, because Middlesbrough was my club, and I used to see the way he was in the office. He didn't have Middlesbrough at heart. He was selfish, and he just wanted what was best for Aitor. Whereas the club, for me, the club's been great with me. The chairman's been unbelievable with me. I class myself as a Borough lad now. And so I felt a little bit let down that people didn't stick up for me a little bit more than they did. Like I say, I'm not. That's not a slight at the chairman because he's not around and he doesn't see what's going on. He just hears stories and certain people's takes on stuff.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing for me because that was my ambition. My ambition was to stay at Middlesbrough for as long as I could, and I loved being the assistant. It was really testing because he, like I say, he was, as an assistant, you needed to do everything. You needed to sort the coach out and you get off the bus and go and get the keys for the hotels and give them all to him. But he had to have his first. Go and see the chef at the hotel, make sure the food was the right colour and not the. There was loads of little daft things that I had to do that I shouldn't have had to do.
Yeah, he seemed very full on.
Full on for stupid things, for daft little things. But the one thing about him was his preparation, as in the game prep, was brilliant. His presentation to the team before the games were all good. They got longer and longer as it went on, but they were good. His attention to detail was really good. The training sessions, the way he went about them were really good. And that's something that I've took with me, that I've took some of his ideas, or whether it was his ideas, Jose's ideas, and added them to what I do. And that's been a good thing for me. I learned a lot of Fighter, and it was a different way of doing things, and I've seen things being done a different way to what normal English managers would do.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was good for me. It was an eye opener for me. So whilst I was disappointed with how it finished, I'm grateful for some of the stuff that I learned off him.
Yeah, I mean, myself personally, I was gutted that he left at the time. Obviously, a bit of a hero of mine, a legend at the club. Obviously, I think a lot of fans had wanted to see you eventually become manager by Todd left. Obviously, we all know he had a bit of a few troubles later on, falling out with this, that, and the other player.
It was always going to happen, and I'd said when I left, I told them that what was going to happen. So whatever happened a few months later, you could, if you were in it, inside it, you knew it was going to happen. 100%, you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, and then from there, you went back to Hartlepool. You managed to get the job. Obviously, you had sort of been there as manager, left, then you came back again after Matty Bates had left with, I think it was Raj Singh. You were director of football, ended up being manager. Richard Money came in, didn't really work out for him. What happened there then? Did you obviously you ended up switching roles for a while?
Yeah, I didn't want to, biggest mistake in my life, if I'm honest. I was happy. I got Raj involved with Jeff Stelling to take over the club. And Raj I'd classed as a friend. So I would advise all the football stuff was my job, putting the football stuff together. I enjoyed that. The director of football bit was fine. But then after Matty went and Richard Money came in and it didn't work out, he looked at me and said, well, look, you do it. And Richard Money had said we should swap roles. And I was thrown under a bus a little bit. I didn't want to do it because I knew Raj's reputation with managers. He sacked managers for fun. He assured me that, we were mates and this is as good a chance as I've got to get back in as a manager with someone who'd support me. Now, we didn't have money. We had to reduce the wage bill. So the wage bill was something like 900 grand, 950 grand. We had to reduce it to 750.
Yeah.
So I knew it was a big job. And 750 in the National League, it's 14th, 15th biggest budget in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But all along, you just want the club to get better. And I knew over time, even with that budget, over time, we'd get better because you'd bring in players who were better than what we had. And over time, you end up getting a better team on less money. But Raj wasn't like that. Raj wanted to be top two straight away. We'd had a decent end to the season. The following season, I signed a few players in the summer. Didn't have a great start. But then, as the season was going on, we were getting better and better. And I think we were 4 points off a playoff spot. We just beat Yeovil, I think they were third or second. They'd won 8 in a row, and we just beat them on the Saturday. Went to Stockport and got beat 2-1 and played really poorly first half, but battered them second half. And if the game would have went on 10 minutes, we'd have probably won it.
Yeah.
And then I get a call to say that he was making a change, but it wasn't off him. It was off the chief executive, a fellow called Mark Maguire, who the less said about him, the better at the minute. So I was shocked, 4 points off a playoff, going all right. Just reduced the wage bill again. We were getting players out and bringing more players in. And I felt we'd be there or thereabouts. I thought we'd get in the playoffs by the end of this season. So that was a big shock. But the biggest shock for me is him not speaking to me. He's supposed to be your mate.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you give me the phone call? And you get sacked in football. That happens. Whether it's just or not, doesn't matter. It happens. So you've got to accept it. What I can't accept is someone who's supposed to be a friend who doesn't speak to you, who doesn't tell you himself. And then the way they've behaved since then has been nothing short of disgusting. I won't be speaking to him again. I haven't been paid my money yet off Hartlepool, and that was 8 months ago. I'm still waiting for them to pay me money. They still owe me money. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm going to have to say something. It's all right. Keep phoning them up and keep getting false promises. But it comes to a point where you've got to out these people, because the way the football club's been run, they'll turn that into a non-league club. They've done it already. They've sacked a load of staff now. Could have furloughed them, but didn't.
Yeah.
Just got them off the wage bill completely. So the way they're doing things isn't right. And they'll in time will tell. They'll say that some of the decisions they're making have been not short of laughable.
Yeah, I think, and like you're saying there, at the time it seemed surprising even to me, myself, and obviously the Hartlepool fans, like you say, because we were in quite a good position at the time as well. And
yeah, we were, like we say, we were only 4 points off a playoff spot, but I think we had a game in hand, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The league was really tight. I think we were 14th at the time when I went, but we were 4 points and we had probably one of the best forms at the time. We hadn't lost many games at all. I think when I got the sack, we lost 2 in 12. So everyone has a reason. There's a reason why it's happened. I've never been told the reason, because people haven't been upfront and honest with me and straight enough with me to say what the reason was. And even now, I'll phone up and I'll get nothing back, and I'll send text messages to the chief executive and I'll get nothing back. And like I say, it's come to the point now where they need to be outed, because the way that they're running the club is shambolic.
Yeah, I don't even think they know, to be honest with you, why it happened, but there you go.
No, they probably don't, but it's you need a plan in football, and you can't put a plan in place and say, right, we'll go with that, because that's going to take time.
Yeah.
But then 3 months into that plan, think, oh no, we'll change it, we'll go this way. And then 3 months later go, oh no, we were wrong there, let's go back the same way. You're forever going round in circles.
Yeah, I think a lot of chairmen just think it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, they do. A lot of chairmen just think, well, I'm putting my money in, but you've got to understand that there's a process you've got to go through. You can't become a champion overnight. You know what I mean? You can't become Liverpool overnight. That takes time to build. And if you build it properly, you'll get the right type of people involved.
Yeah, definitely.
And they've never stuck with a plan long enough to see it come good. The reputation of the club now will be shattered because of what they've done with the sacking of the staff and the way they treat people, and that'll be, because it wasn't just me. It's my assistant Jed McNamee. He hasn't been paid what he's been owed. So there's only so long before that becomes public knowledge in football, and then people suddenly think, well, hang on a minute, if they're not getting paid and they're supposed to be friends, then what chance have I got if I fall out with them? And what? So you'll get a reputation very quickly in football of being a club that, listen, stay well clear of, because the people who run it are ruthless and they don't care about you. They just look after themselves. Yeah,
I think a lot of people like that, they just sort of run it as a business and they don't see what it means to the club, the fans and that sort of thing. So it never really works out.
No football now at all. You've got no football now. You've got people there now who are running the club who haven't got a clue about football.
Yeah, definitely. So just touching on a few things that I know, not to be honest now, but there you go. The truth is always best, isn't it? Than like you say, so certain people they'll come up and say one thing and they mean a totally different thing. So it's always best.
I've never listen. I'm fair, you know what I mean? If people are fair with me, I'm fair with them. If I get messed about, then I'll tell it like it is. I've always been like that, and sometimes it's got me into trouble and probably lost me jobs at times. But I'd rather be like that than have anything that I'm thinking and I'm not saying.
Yeah, I think that's what a certain Mr. Karanka didn't like.
Right.
He wanted a yes man.
Yeah, he did. Well, he had them.
Yeah.
He had some there. I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, so just going back on a few things. Obviously, you were great mates with Colin Cooper. You've done the walk up Kilimanjaro with him and Jeff. How did that come about? And did he just mention it to you? Say he was doing it for his charity?
Well, yeah. At the time that the Finley Cooper Fund was raising money, and it was a trip to walk up Kilimanjaro, which is something I've always wanted to do. I've always been into stuff like that, where you go up a mountain or do whatever. And so straight away it was a yes. Raised some money, raised a lot of money actually for the Finley Cooper Fund, and got to go on this great trip. And it was fabulous. It was everything you think it'd be. It was tough, but really enjoyable. I loved every minute of it, and to do it and to stand on the top and to have a look out, it was it was great. It was great, and to do it with some of the people we did it with as well. We had a really good group, and of the group, we all got up the top, which is unusual. But we had great weather. It wasn't raining or horrible. It was lovely and sunny, and it was only when you're going up the summit night where it's freezing. But to get 15 of us up the top was brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to tick off the bucket list. An experience like
that.
That.
Honestly, I'd do it again, and I'd love to do it again. And I'd love to do it with a football team, because the team bonding that you'll get from doing something like that together is amazing. The only problem you'd have is if one of them can't because of altitude sickness, because that altitude sickness, it doesn't matter how fit you are, you either get it or you don't. And there's tablets you can take, but once it gets you, you've got to get yourself down.
Yeah. Well, you can do that when you take off at Middles for one day. Pick the players up there.
I'd love that, wouldn't you? You can see the players.
Yeah.
Like,
I ain't doing that. It's not in my contract.
I think Tony Pulis was taking them on mountain bike rides, wasn't he, up mountains?
Yeah.
I think he was doing that in his pre-season. That's not too dissimilar.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I'd just like to say a great thanks for joining me today. I'm just going to ask you a few questions to finish off with. And then I'll let you get on with your day. Thank you very much. So first of all, I'm just going to ask, what would you say your best moment is football, either playing or managing?
No, I think playing wise, it would be the first goal would be up there, walking out at Wembley.
Yeah.
And the Liverpool game, there's a Liverpool game where I scored as well in I don't know, it was a semi-final, quarter-final of the League Cup. That's up there. But I've had some great moments. I mean, a goal at Wembley for Barnsley, that'll stay with me for a while. I scored some good goals at Barnsley. I've had some really good memories at all the clubs I've been at.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to pick one, but obviously the most memorable one is either the goal at Wembley, the Liverpool goal, or the first one at the Riverside.
Yeah. And what would you say was your worst moment in football then?
Worst moment in football is agreeing to be manager of Article for the second time.
Yeah, people always say you should never go back, don't they? Football,
it's a great club. Honestly, it's a great club, and it's a brilliantly supported club. The fans are great. The two spells I had there, I had really poor chairman. One of them who I still speak to him, he just ran out of money and didn't know the best way to get out of it.
Yeah.
Art was in the right place type thing, and then the second one just had unrealistic goals and wasn't straight and up front. Yeah,
definitely. So who would you say was the best player that you've played with in your career?
Well, there's two players, and it's Janino, without a doubt, and Damien Duff. Damien Duff had a spell at Blackburn before he went to Chelsea for 18 million, where everyone wanted him. He was absolutely, he took me back to Janino, how Janino was, going past people, scoring, just absolutely taking the mickey sometimes in games. The same way Junie did. Junie could win a game in 20 minutes for you, and Duffer was exactly the same. So I'd put them two very, very close.
Yeah, I think that's when he had at Blackburn there before he went to Chelsea. Like you said there, he had a great spell. Definitely a great technically gifted player.
He was outstanding. And he went to the World Cup with Ireland and was brilliant in the World Cup as well. And like I say, there was a lot of clubs, European clubs, Man United, Liverpool. He ended up going to Chelsea. But he was fantastic, Damien Duff.
Yeah, definitely. So who would you say was the best player you played against then?
Ronaldinho. I played against Ronaldo, but he was only young then. Ronaldo had just come to Man United. Ronaldinho, we played Barcelona in a pre-season friendly at Leicester, and Ronaldinho played in this game, and he was just sensational, massive, big lad, powerful, quick, skill beyond belief. Never could get near him. Always seemed to have the ball 3 or 4 yards away from you, no matter what happened.
Yeah.
Just tremendous ability. He was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, he was definitely one of them where he just looked so natural to him, and he could just do anything with the ball. He just sit there and
Brazilian,
yeah,
Brazilian. Like, they're all like, they love all the they're so loose the way they play, and so carefree. And he was exactly like that, loose.
Very flamboyant, aren't they?
Yeah, very powerful and quick. Bigger than you think. When you stand next to him, you think, well, he's a unit.
Yeah.
A unit.
And who would you say was the biggest joker? I think I can probably guess who you'll say, but
as is 100%, there'll be no one like Gaza ever again in football. Just an unbelievable personality.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like he's some of the things he's got up to, like you were saying earlier. You'd probably never see another like him again.
Nah, legendary. He couldn't be. He wouldn't earn enough money for the fines that he'd get, because the amount of money you'd pay out for what he used to do was it's insane. He was so always at it. There was never a minute off with him. He was always looking to do something to someone or make someone laugh, there was never a minute where he wouldn't think of something to do.
Yeah, I think he was like hyperactive, wasn't he? He just couldn't sit still. Yeah. Yeah. So, who would you say was either your best or your most favourite manager who you had the best time in your career underneath?
That's a tough one. I mean, Dario was obviously brilliant for me. He taught me everything about the game, and I owe him a lot.
Yeah.
Brian Robson was a real thrill to work for. Dave Bassett was brilliant.
Few characters there, wasn't there?
Yeah, I had some really good guys. Guy McAllister was a good manager at Coventry when I was there. Souness, good manager. I've played a lot of good managers, or under a lot of decent managers. For me, probably the best man manager was probably Dave Bassett as a man manager. As a technical coach, and Dario Gradi was brilliant. But like I say, I've had a lot of good managers in between.
Yeah. So I'll just finish on the last question then. So what was the best piece of advice that you've received in your whole career, whether it be, like you say, when you were playing or managing?
Believe in yourself. Don't listen to what other people say to you. Don't take that for granted. You just believe in yourself and know what you're going to do. And that was nothing technical. That was me dad. Just saying, taking notice of people. I was always small, and I was always, he's too small to be a footballer. He's all right, but he's too small. Or don't listen to them. He used to tell me not to listen to them. He knew what I could do. I knew what I could do. And never take anyone's opinion on you for your own, because you know yourself better than anyone. And it was always when you get a lot of knockbacks as you're growing up in football and you're trying to make your way. And football really is about, there's more lows than there is highs.
Yeah,
and it's how you deal with them. You don't want to get too down, just the same way as you don't want to get too carried away with yourself. And your dad was a big one for that. He'd say, listen, you'll have disappointments.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're a bad player, and it doesn't mean anyone's thinking worse of you. That's just what happens. You just got to believe that what you're doing is the right thing. So that for me is probably the best best bit of advice I've had.
Yeah, it sounds like me with my kids now. My 2 kids, I've got a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old. They're both playing for Stockton Town, and they always have moments where they think, "Oh, well, I can't do it. I can't do this," and then you just got to tell them, like, don't listen to anybody else, and they've just got to believe in
No,
themselves.
there hasn't been a footballer alive who hasn't made a mistake, or who hasn't felt rubbish, or who hasn't. Everyone's the same. It's how you deal. I always think you can tell a player by how they deal with the setbacks.
Yeah.
So some will just give up and go, I can't do it. I can't. It's the ones who roll their sleeves up and go, no, I can do it, and I'm going to show you that I can do it. And they're the ones that, and they don't always have to be the best ability. I've seen some kids with unbelievable ability not do anything, and I've seen kids with a bit of determination and get further without having as much as what people who fell by the wayside have got. And I'll tell you, Gary Neville's a prime example of it.
Yeah.
Gary Neville, if you read Gary Neville's book, he was one who stayed out, kicked against the wall. People took the mickey out of him because of what he used to do, how he used to train and try and get better. And he got the absolute max out of what he had. And it's people like that who I'd much rather have in my team than people who say, I can't do it, it's too hard.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the same as in life, and you've just got to have the right mentality and just be a bit sort of single-minded, really, and not listen to the outside.
Absolutely. Just don't listen to anyone. Just you crack on and do what you do. Yeah,
definitely. That's definitely the way I am. Sort of, like I say, like it's tough moments at the moment where you can't really do anything. Especially for me myself, I'm a personal trainer. I can't get to the gym or anything, so it's hard.
That's like me. All my work stopped. I've got nothing. I can't do anything. The scouting, the commentary, the after dinners. Yeah, they've all been knocked on the head. So I would imagine it'll be end of August, September before I'm back out and doing what I like doing. So it's a long time to wait.
Yeah, just trying to keep active. I've got the kids in the garden with me doing my own little workout sessions and all that sort of thing. So making the most of the space.
I've got a little bit I've got a little bit in the gym in the garage where I've got some bit of equipment, and I'm trying to keep fit doing that. And obviously the dog, I'm out an hour a day with the dog, but that's it. I'm trying to stay in as much as I can.
Yeah, same here. Aye. Oh, well, like I say, thank you very much for joining me today, Craig. It's a great pleasure.
No, the pleasure was all mine, pal.
Bit of a hero of mine, mate. Yeah, thank you very much, mate, and take care of your family.
Cheers, mate, and you.
Thanks, Craig.
Bye-bye.
Best, pal.
Bye-bye.